Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crossroad Conversation. Our guest for today loves reading. She believes there is nothing she cannot learn. In her words, knowing is not purely knowledge that creates success within academia, but it goes beyond mere knowledge. It involves the right mindset, self efficacy, and emotional intelligence. She is an international dissertation coach from Greece. She is Maria Stefanidi. Hello, Maria, and welcome to our podcast.
Oh, it's so nice to be here. Thank you, Jennifer.
How are you doing, Maria? How has your day been today?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Um, things are going pretty well, actually. So everything's okay.
Wonderful. So, Maria, let me start with my first question. I want to know, since you're connected to dissertation, learning, education so closely, let me speak to you about your education. Yeah. You pursued your master's degree in UK. What were the challenges you faced as an international student? What did you have to learn and unlearn? Walk us through that journey.
So the good thing was that while I was in Greece, all my education so far was Greek in combination with English. So language was not a barrier. But what was very challenging for me was sitting alone in a hotel room trying to find, a place to stay. That was challenging because I felt all alone. And I didn't have the support group I had by the time I left UK. So I realized that I had to depend on me. So, I took action and finally found a Greek family that could offer me a room and I stayed there. Other than that, it's a beautiful experience to be an international student, although there are several challenges. For example, culture, you get to visit a place where things are not like you have, mm, like different from
Where
the
you've grown up and what you've seen all through your life.
and that's fascinating on the one hand, but it's a little bit, you need to struggle a little bit with that. Um, so I would say having a place to stay, getting into a new routine, knowing the place where to go, the library, and all those things that are part of, everyday life, and obviously meeting new people, making friends, and meeting their professors as well. It's a whole new level of you know mm, introducing yourself to something that's outside of your comfort zone.
And I'm sure, getting out of that comfort zone, there's so much more you would have learned about your own self, grown from where you were. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to quickly take you back in time again into that same place when you were in the UK. Um, And I don't know, maybe you have gone through a lot of difficult times, and this may be just one small part of it, but I'm sure as a student in a new land, navigating through so many other things, so many challenges and hurdles, this would have been a difficult time in your life. So please bear with me while I ask this question. I want to take you back in time. I want you to tap into those emotions, those feelings and thoughts, and what actions did you take? And the situation, or what I'm referring to here is, tell us about that pivotal moment, when your professor failed you and you even considered transferring to another university in London. But then you didn't give up. You stuck your guns. You just, you were resilient. You were persistent with what you wanted to do. So walk us through your emotional journey, your emotional roller coaster, and how did you cope up with rejection and how did you spring right back up?
So, yeah, the thing is that I've always been a good student. So imagine my 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 astonishment when that professor failed me, because that had never happened before. So I was shocked at first, then I was angry, extremely angry at him, and then I took a couple of deep breaths and started seeing what my options were. Obviously, the first option is to retake the class and rewrite the assignment and pass and move on to the dissertation period. But the thing is that that was kind of a shock for me, because all my life, I've known that I was a good student. So it shook me. I mean, my self-confidence didn't, wasn't so high as it used to be before that happened. And it was a situation that I had to figure out how I would overcome. The thing was that I couldn't rely on him 100%, about giving me a pass, because he had already failed me.
Right.
So I was trying to, I think my brain got into some kind of resilient mode, problem solving, having everything organized, because I needed to find a solution, because I was not going back to my country without a degree. That was a non-negotiable for me. So I sat down, I went through all my options, and I found another master's that was beginning at the September of that year. So I applied there. I got accepted. I got a house near the university to stay. I mean, I found everything. I figured everything out. What would happen if he failed me again? So once I had figured that all that out, I felt less stressed and less overwhelmed, because I told myself, like, Maria, even if he fails you again, that's fine. You have another option. And so I obviously rewrote the assignment and I passed. And his comment was that you could have done it this good right from the start. So it wasn't necessary for him to fail me. And I didn't understand that at that point. But yeah, it made sense eventually. But it was quite a shock. Yes, there was a lot of drama, crying, that, and the anger I felt for that guy. But not necessary. At the end of the story, nothing was necessary of those. I just needed to show that I can figure a way out, not give up, and have a conversation with myself about what the worst case scenario was and what the best case scenario was. And since I was prepared for the worst case scenario, that was brilliant. I mean, I was relieved. And then I focused on rewriting the essay and everything worked out perfectly.
Right. Yeah. So was it this pivotal moment that pointed you towards your calling as a dissertation coach? Why did you choose this? Why did you choose this niche?
Beautiful question. So once I got to the dissertation season, I started much earlier than the other students, because I was trying to find a topic that I liked. And so I was in the library all the time, finding stuff. And in that process, I experimented a lot with time management, energy management. I was trying to figure out ways of how I can make this whole journey, the dissertation thing, more pleasant, and how I could be more effective as a student, to sit down and actually write the dissertation and do a good job with that. So once I was done, and it was earlier than other students, my classmates started asking me, how did you do that? How did you know that? How? And I helped, one-on-one, obviously, my classmates to show them what they could do, what worked for me, but also other ways of what could work for them. And I ended up having a group of people in my room brainstorming on their topics and doing a job, something like it was like brainstorming, but with positive vibes.
Mm.
And so when I got back to Greece, my best friend was like, "Why don't you do it as as a proper it's a proper job, I think." So I started, having it as a side hustle. And then during COVID, I got my coaching certification and I adapted everything from life coaching to dissertation coaching. And I founded my business, Your Dissertation Coach company. And I have been a full-time dissertation coach since then.
Wow, wonderful. And I think that's the reason you failed because that led you to where you are now. It just redirected you in the right direction.
Yes, that's true. Although at that moment, I couldn't see that.
Right. I think that's always true with everyone. When troubles come our way, when we have to face trials, we just, we get into that negative mode. All we see is negativity, all we see is sadness. We can't see beyond that. It's just that veil in front of us. But yeah, once we walk past that, we look back, we can realize, why that happened and why did it happen to us. What I believe that, whenever any such kind of a situation comes with us, it's only because there's something better in store for us. We have to improve. And sometimes we are not proactive enough to search for that door, for that right door. Only when one door kind of shuts on us, we turn to that other door. So that's God's way of just moving us to the right place, I guess.
Blessing or don't.
Yeah, yeah. So, Maria, let me take a quick pause and have this off guard question where I'm going to ask you a fun question, and then we'll move right into your niche. So, let's see what we have. I would ask you to pick a number between 1 to 5.
I'm fine.
5. All right. So, I have here, what's the weirdest or most unusual talent you have?
Yes. Okay, I have one, I think.
All right. So what's that weird talent that you have?
Okay, so I have a talent in, you know, read mm, when students feel overwhelmed. I have a talent in making them feel better, after I have a conversation with them, because I've been told that I have an energy that kind of calms them down.
Mm,
And talent that I have is I create schedules and calendars that are color coded and they look like rainbows. And there is a special it's color is related to a certain, if it's an area of our life, kids,
mm,
family, how you spend your time. And instead of, having a very, boring calendar and a to-do list, I always find a way to make boring stuff more, I gamify them and I make them as pleasant as I can, including the dissertation and the academic stuff that can be pretty unpleasant. But I think that's my talent, and the fact that I use colors everywhere.
yeah. Colors just add that extra happiness to our life. Colors in itself, I can't pick a favorite color. If someone asks me pick a favorite color, it's quite difficult for me because it just depends on what kind of a mood I am in that time.
Exactly, and I believe colors make a huge difference in our mood, and yeah, especially in our mood.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let us hop right into questions about your niche. So we know when students begin their thesis and they do their research, they feel very overwhelmed. Maybe they don't know where to start and what to do. But their challenges don't start or end with just that academic questions. Their journey into completing this thesis, it takes them through a lot of emotions and self-discovery, like yourself. And I believe these emotions and hurdles that they go through are something that even working professionals could face and not just students. So, could you share with us some of the hurdles students face, and do they realize that they are going through these hurdles, or do they just see it as something related to academic?
So usually, students that I have come across focus too much on the knowledge part, which
Right.
especially, if you are a postgraduate or a PhD student, it makes sense because it's your research. But the thing that makes their whole journey more challenging is not knowledge. I mean, at that level, you must have some kind of knowledge and you know how to read and how to study. I mean, it's not high school. You're many levels above that and you're more mature as a student. So I feel they underestimate the value of that emotional roller coaster you mentioned. And they think they place more focus on what do I have to do? What do I actually have to do? Sit down and write. Brilliant. Sit down and write. But if you are experiencing writer's block, procrastination, you simply don't want to deal with it, or maybe you're experiencing burnout and you can't sit down and actually write, you can expect yourself to do that if you first don't take care of yourself, overcome all these emotions, because overwhelm is also an emotion. When you start and say, okay, how many words do I have to write? Having a more practical approach to a thesis or a dissertation doesn't end well, because it's all the other parts that come into this journey and you have completely underestimated. So that's why I have created a coaching framework, and one huge part is all about knowledge. And yes, it's the academic part, but the other part is about planning, accountability, trust building, and a holistic balance. Because, for example, what I have experienced is that many students prefer to, when they are stressed or overwhelmed, the first thing they do is they cut down the hours of sleep they get every day and they eat junk food, because falsely they believe that, I'm winning time for my dissertation or my thesis. But you might do that temporarily, but in the long run, because we're not talking about a project that will take you 1 month, especially a thesis, so that at the end of the road, you will experience burnout. So it has nothing to do with knowledge. It has a lot to do with knowing what to do with yourself and growing and learning more about you and finding ways that will help you enhance skills that will be very important even in the professional world or the personal, your professional growth or your personal growth. Because PhD is not something, or a postgraduate degree, it's not something that I sit down, I read, I write, and here's what I did. You bring elements of resilience, self-confidence, because you need to be confident to present it and be super happy and proud of what you produced. So there are various elements and skills that you enhance during that period, and they are transferable skills. Once you get a job, you can, take those skills with you and be a much more sought after candidate than other people will be.
And is it common for students to be procrastinating when they're working on their thesis paper? Is that something very common that you see?
Yes. But the thing that I always say is that they need to find out why they procrastinate. Because the reason why you do something is, you have solved half the problem. Because it might be that it's something, for example, too overwhelming and you don't know where to start. So you need to break down, you need to do some things in order to respond to the why you do it, which is I feel overwhelmed, so I just postpone it. But then you get too near to the deadline, and it's super stressing. So why you procrastinate is very important. And yes, I see it a lot, but for various reasons. Many students are perfectionists. So that means that once they sit down and write and produce and, create paragraphs and all that, they never send it to their supervisor because they feel that it's not perfect enough or perfect. So I always say done is better than perfect.
Right, right.
So
And
they procrastinate a lot.
so, would you share a few practical techniques that you share with your students to overcome this procrastination and to maintain that consistency across, their productivity?
Yes. The thing is that I always say they need to have a routine. A routine makes things easier. It's simple as that. I know it might be boring, but you can make a kind of interesting routine. But you need to write and read every day. It's something that needs consistency, and it doesn't have to be, all days are not the same and all weeks are not the same. So it makes sense that when things come up, you need to be adaptable and flexible, because that is going to happen. I mean, I read a very humorous quote on Instagram that there will be days that you will move mountains, but there will be days that you will move from the bed to the couch, and they are both necessary. Meaning that it's not all days are the same, and unexpected things happen. But while they happen, you shouldn't give up, and you shouldn't say that I'll deal with that, my dissertation tomorrow, and that tomorrow never comes. So you need to make a commitment to yourself. Be be kind to yourself. That's another key thing. You don't have to be too strict with yourself. You are your best friend, and you need to, we all have that inner critic and, self-doubt and negative emotions that come up, but they're so not necessary. Just by showing kindness to ourselves, like we are kind to other people, to our friends mainly. So we can talk to ourselves like saying, it's okay, this happens, let's move on to tomorrow. I mean, actually have a conversation with yourself, because it helps. It's like talking to another person, but you talk to yourself. Then, obviously breaking down tasks into making them tiny. And I have recently created, I was very bored of the to-do lists, and my students as well. I mean, the students that I work with. And I created a menu list, which is all about, when you go to a restaurant, there are some appetizers, the main courses, and the desserts. So those categories are the difficulty level of its task that you have to do. So each morning, a student can decide what he has time and energy to do. So he might mean, I create a bunch of menu of to-do tasks, but more beautiful, I mean. And they get to choose, they get to choose which one they will do every day. It's like giving them freedom to choose based on how they feel and how much time available they have and the energy levels that they have. So that's it's still a to-do list, but it's a different perspective.
Right. I think this is in contrast to that book that says, Eat the Frog, right? Where you don't go and tackle head on the most difficult task at the start of your day to get it done with, but you see how you are feeling. If you are having that energy levels, go for it. If not, you still got to keep moving rather than saying, okay, I don't have that energy, so I won't do it at all. So
Exactly.
progression and keep
Exactly.
moving is the key here, I think, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can go on and on and on, I love
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. You want to add something else?
No,
Okay.
to be like whatever you
All
want. If
right.
you, I can.
Yeah, if go ahead, Maria, go for it, because I keep adding, points here, uh, just to probe you to if you have more things to add to it. So just feel free. It's not going to be like, okay, I ask you a question, so it's just going to be this answer. So feel free to speak as much as you want. This is all your time.
Okay. So remember earlier that I mentioned about, students cutting down on hours of sleep, and, self-care is a non-negotiable. I mean, if you're not feeling well, you can't reach your full potential. And when I say, take care of your well-being, it's a holistic approach. It's your mindset, it's what you think, it's what you eat, what if you exercise, it's physical and mental and social, because, once you get enrolled into a program, an academic program, it doesn't mean that you have no longer friends or family. So there is a social well-being as well. It might be friends, family, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, a relationship that means a lot to you. It could also be hobbies or, things that give you energy and give you joy so that you can later on, return back to your workspace and sit down and write and feeling energized.
Right.
I would also add that, in order to overcome procrastination, because that was, I think, the initial question, right? About ways. I think that every student and every person in general, not just students, go back to their why. Why did they start that PhD? Why did they get that job? Why do they have the goal that they have? Because that gives you motivation, kind of overcomes procrastination, or at least lessens it, and you find your drive and stay close to why you started, your purpose, your meaning, because you obviously chose to enroll in a program or chose to get a job thinking something in the future that will be better for you. So I would definitely say have somewhere written. I'm a pen and paper girl, but okay, you can have a wallpaper as well. It works fine as well. So why do you do that? Why? You should never forget, because there will be things, coming your way, and challenges and hurdles and all that, but you should never lose your focus, because you will lose your motivation. You will lose, your drive to achieve the goal that you have.
Right.
And also, I'll continue. Then it's also, the part with flexibility and adaptability. It's huge. It's what you said before about not giving up entirely when unexpected things happen. So you need to enhance all your skills that will help you adapt. Even, during COVID, it was a huge shock for the whole world, but you saw how much universities adapted, jobs, companies adapted. So it was their strength, and it's your strength to adapt to things that happen beyond your control or challenges that might come up. So it's a definitely huge, so important skill to have, the adaptability and the flexibility, because you will need it later on for jobs as well. it's a very sought after skill by companies.
Right. Yeah. And I think the coaching that you are doing for the students, that's the reason I said whatever we're going to discuss today, it's not going to just be for students, because you, of course, help them academically, help them about the knowledge piece of it. But there are so many other things linked to it that actually cause those hurdles for them. And this is going to help them in the future when they become professionals and move into the real world. Yeah.
Exactly. And what I always tell them that your degree is just a milestone to where you want to get once you're done. So it's just an adventure, get the best out of it and move on. It's not like the
Right.
end of the world, it's just a simple milestone.
Right. And yeah, since you mentioned about milestones, is it helpful to them if they celebrate these milestones to acknowledge progress? Or, if they celebrate these milestones, does it derail these students, making them lose focus? Should they keep that celebration for right till the end?
Okay, I'm all about celebrating. No, I mean, we people have the tendency to forget the good things that we achieve and we do and focus too much on the negative stuff. So we even forget what we had for lunch, yesterday, the day before or something, but we are fixed and super focused on the negative stuff. So I think the celebration, even the tiniest accomplishment, it could be I got through this day without breaking down.
Right.
It's an accomplishment because life is not easy for everyone and to everyone. And there will be periods in everyone's life that will be more challenging than others. So if you feel proud of yourself, you feel confident that you pushed through a challenging period and you want to celebrate, I think it's an absolute right of everyone to do that. I mean, it's a blessing just to focus on the positive. And since you mentioned that, can I just go over a little bit about an exercise that I do with the students that I work with?
Yes, we
Okay,
would love to hear that.
okay. It's the good vibes jar, I have called it. It's based on let me see her name because I keep forgetting. So Gemma Lay Robert has a similar or something. It was an inspiration. She has a positivity box, but I adapted it into the whole academic stuff. So it's kind of an exercise to, it's simple, it's powerful because it shows and it helps students create a positive and growth mindset along their journey because they reflect upon positive experiences and positive, and achievements, which is rare. We never do that. We almost never do that. So I make them do this exercise, and it's all about, getting picking a jar, obviously, and decorating it or whatever. And then the next job you have to do is fill it in with papers, and it can be handwritten notes about positive feelings that you have. But since I do the exercise as well, lately I have been printing out messages and nice things I get from the people I work with, the people who approach me, whatever, something positive, and I print it out and I put that in the jar. And every day, because you need to have a routine for that jar too, because I love routines, as I told you. And weekly or monthly or whenever you're not feeling very self-confident, you just, pick one of those things that you have put into the jar or the paper that you have put in the jar, and you read it and you revisit the moment when you got to open that email. It can be an email from a professor, or it can be just a memo from your boss. It doesn't matter. Or just a cute drawing from your kids. It doesn't matter. In that jar, you will put anything that makes you feel positive. It can be achievements, it can be, love letters, whatever. Just the whole meaning is to relieve the moment and remember those emotions. Because negativity is all over the place. And it doesn't have to be, we can have some tiny things that we can keep our positivity and actually be able, you can celebrate each time you just take a paper out of that jar. It's the whole concept that, yes, I did it and I deserve to, whatever you reward yourself with.
Yeah. And I think it is like, as you said, that we have to be our own best friend. And for thesis kind of a project which is such a long tenured one, uh, it's not like a small project. You complete it, you get a pat on your back or a reward for it. So working on it, meeting those milestones, you have to pat your own back. You have to motivate your own self. So I think celebrating is going to motivate you even more. And that small exercise that you spoke about, the jar, that's very, very creative too. you know it is a very nice way to getting yourself out of a situation, moving yourself, your mental state of mind into something positive, a tool. Because if we just sit there and think, how can we think of positive thoughts, it doesn't come to us. So this exercise, I
Exactly.
think, is very creative. All right, so let me ask you about students who have a job at hand. Yeah, they are doing their degrees and their career alongside, hand in hand. And I'm sure, if not few, if not most of them, but a few of them would have approached you regarding balancing work and studies during this taxing process. So I know you advocate for it and you prioritize self care, which you mentioned some time back as well. So tell us, why is self care important during this thesis completion process?
So I have worked with moms, dads, CEOs, wanting to get over with their degree and move on with their lives. So it's challenging, the fact that you have different roles every day and you need to find the time and the energy for each role. So definitely needs a lot of good planning and good organization so that you can, achieve all the goals. But during that process, you shouldn't falsely believe that you can do everything. Obviously, you need to prioritize, because if you do everything, you will end up feeling exhausted. And if someone experiences burnout, it takes like double the time to recover from a burnout. So it's it's lost time. Although they think that, I gained 2 hours I sacrificed 2 hours of sleep and I got to work 2 hours more. No, that doesn't work. So if it's so challenging, I mean, the schedule and the roles that a student has, I always try to implement into their schedule just like 10 to 15 minutes of self-care activities. It doesn't have to be a 2-hour massage. It will be when they graduate. But until then, they need to have every day on their calendar a 10 to 15-minute self-care activity. It could be hobbies, calling a friend of yours, things that make you happy. It could be breathing, meditating, whatever. I have a list of like 100 ideas of what they can do for 5 to 15 minutes every day, and they need to pick one every day. It's a non-negotiable, I told you. So it's very important, because they will reach their full potential that way. If they don't feel well, they're not going to perform well in any sector, in any category.
Right.
So,
I think that creativity juices just stop flowing after a certain point of time. You have to give your mind rest. I don't know where I read, but in some kind of research or survey that was done, I think it was said that even when you're studying or working on something, you have to get up at least every 20 to 30 minutes, get up from your space, move around, do something else, so that you
mhm.
can be more productive. So I think I advocate this as well, of self care, because um, if you think your thesis is important, you need to dedicate your days, nights, hours, minutes, everything just to that. You are not going to do what you enjoy, playing or watching movie, or as you said, listening to music, meditation, whatever it may be. When you stop doing those things, you are keeping yourself away from something that you like. You, in a way, get frustrated that you're not able to do that, it is there at the back of your mind, but you don't realize it. And because of that frustration, you aren't able to, do more on your thesis. Right. So I think it very well goes hand in hand where you give time to what you like, and then creativity work keeps going on even at a better rate, I would say.
Just let me just make a small note here that once you, for example, if watching Netflix is one thing that gives you pleasure, it's fine to watch an episode and not the whole series. Because I have students, reaching out to me and like, oh, I did what you told me. I watched the whole series. No, not all 12 episodes. That's a reward once you hand in your thesis or your dissertation. Not, no. I meant an episode, not the whole thing. So it needs to be some kind of proportional to the effort you give. The reward must be equivalent to the effort you put in. Or even if you have it as something that gives you joy, put it in the schedule, obviously, in your calendar.
Right. Yeah. Anything in the right proportion is good. Too much sugar gives you diabetes. Yeah. All right. So, would you like to suggest some practical strategies or activities that students can incorporate into their routine, to promote mental or physical well-being? Of course, you've suggested a few, like the one watching Netflix, but not the entire series. So, do these students come to you and ask you for suggestions of what they could do, or do they bring their examples and say, "Can I do this? Can I do that?" How do you help incorporate it into their routine?
A great question. So once someone decides that they want to work with me, I set up, it's a 90-minute session and it's a bonus to the program where we get to sit down and they walk me through their days. I mean, I need to know what time available they have so that there will be thesis related or dissertation related tasks inserted in that calendar. So as as I get to know them more and they get to know me more and trust me more, there's always the self-care thing comes up all the time because they tend to forget it or most of them tell me that I don't have time. Well, you better make time because it will not end well if you don't. So as we sit down, I never tell the students that I work with what to do, but I always give them alternatives or checklists or, things to try out. And once they do try out, for example, from a checklist, from the 100 checklist, they will just try 1 or 2, 3, 4 within a week so that in our next session, I get a feedback of what worked and what didn't. And that's the major thing that the students get when they work with me, because by the end of our program and, working together, they have a pretty clear idea of what works for them and what doesn't. So self-care is definitely in the agendas always and every week, because I need to find what works for them and they need to find for themselves what works for them. Because after 3 or 6 months working with me, a year, whatever, I want them to be able to take whatever we created together and implement that to their lives from then on. So I want them to build something brilliant, obviously, and something that if you know what works for you, or when are your peak hours, when you are most productive. Obviously, that knowledge you can implement it everywhere.
Right.
So yeah, I don't tell them what to do, but I'm very creative in giving them alternatives and things to try out.
Wonderful. And how do you navigate different student personalities? So let me explain what I mean. There would be extroverts and there would be introverts. These extroverts are very proactive in asking a lot of questions and are progressing according to that. And on the other hand, we have these introverts who want to do well, but they're not proactive in seeking the feedback that's required to progress. So how do you work with these different personality of students to ensure that you are helping them succeed in their thesis?
So one of the things that are included in my programs is accountability. And the personality of a person shows during the accountability sessions because, I need to, for example, I always ask, do you want me to keep you accountable every day? Because there are people who feel frustrated, with having someone in their email or on their phone, like, hey, how are you? How are you doing? They feel it's too pushy for them. It's too demanding, and they prefer weekly, for example, accountability and seeing the progress in a week's time. Other people who are so energized and they have motivation or are extroverts, they it shows when we have the accountability sessions, because it's the tension that they want me to keep them accountable so that they don't miss even a day, or people who are who are less dynamic but still want the accountability. I mean, they have no option, to be honest with you. I will keep them accountable, but I have no monthly accountability. I mean, I don't hold them accountable once a month. That's out of the question. So it's either daily or weekly. And I told you this, I shared it with you because, again, the whole program and what I do is fully customized to the personality of a person, to the experiences. I have a different approach to students who are PhD students trying to finish their PhD after 5 years or 6 years, because they have family, work, and all that. And it's a different approach if it's an undergrad who can't wait to finish to get his first job. So I fully customize everything. That's why I can't have 100 people that I work with. But I get to adapt all programs. Definitely, I have a coaching framework that, as I said with you before, but I adapt it the best way that I can into their personality and experiences.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I'll ask you just two more questions. If you want to share with us, a unique success story of one of your students. You didn't expect that kind of an outcome, or maybe you were not expecting that kind of a journey with that learner. Anything unique about one of your students that you worked with?
Case where I always congratulate myself. I'm like, I'm good. So the thing was, a PhD student on their 8th year, all over the place, not having finished anything at the university, pressing for, to see something written, and no organization at all, no nothing. And we get on a call because I offer a free 45-minute dissertation breakthrough session where I get to understand where they are and all that. And it's chaos. Jennifer, it's chaos. And I don't know where to start. And I get the first shock, and then I try to explain about priorities, what comes first, second, the knowledge part, but the emotional part was out of this world. And she reaches out to me 5 days after our free call, and she's like, yeah, I want to work with you. And I'm like, no, really? Okay. So the challenge with this girl was that she wasn't implementing anything that I was telling her. So she just, it's unpleasant for me as a coach, to go all in and propose different ways and find something fun to do and all that. And the student being, no. So it was a challenge. So we sat down. It's weekly 1-hour calls, but I sat down with her for like 2 hours, and I'm like, you need to decide why you decide. Because if you are a PhD student, for more than 8 years, it means that something's happening there. Either you don't want to get that PhD, so you can quit, which is not an option when they work with me, but anyway, and see, and we must find what's the thing that keeps you behind. I mean, very behind. And we did a session, and I questioned her like I was some kind of police officer in an interrogation, and I wouldn't let her go until she heard herself say what was the biggest barrier. And the biggest barrier was that she never believed that she could do it. So forget about the knowledge at that point. We needed to work on, the mindset, thinking. If you think that you're not going to make it, you're not going to try. You will never try to do something that you don't believe that you can do. And it makes sense. But until we got to that point, it was a disaster. And so I focused on mindset because I knew she had the knowledge, and they usually do. And even if they don't, we break it down, keywords, whatever, literature review and all that academic stuff. And that's fine as well. But we worked so much on her mindset, like journaling, affirmation, talking to herself, yes, I can do it. And at some point, I always ask her in every meeting, so do you feel ready? Do you feel ready? Do you feel ready? And the answer was always no. But at one meeting, there was like hallelujah moment. She said, yes, I know I can do this. She unlocked, it became someone else. And she finished her thesis in 1 year and a half after that brilliant moment we had together. And yeah, that's the most successful story I share.
Yeah, I think, I think most coaches have to deal and work with this thing. I've spoken to business coaches. I've spoken to, leadership coaches, all different kind of coaches. And before meeting you, I didn't even know that there is something called a dissertation coach. And speaking to all so many coaches, I realized they don't just focus on business or growth, or in your case the thesis and knowledge. It's the mindset, it's the limiting beliefs that hold on to a person, and that's where you need to crack open first, solve that, and everything just falls into place.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Maria, finally, looking ahead, what developments or changes do you hope to see in how academia or universities address the well being and support of graduate students?
Great question. The well-being has been an issue lately because of, the mental health challenges students face, especially as an aftermath from COVID. And there are universities that take it really seriously. I mean, supporting students. And I see that in the US and the UK mainly. But still, there's a long way to go. Because I understand that universities want to enhance your academic skills, but there's just so much more that you gain as a student. So it's a good thing that I see, on social media about mental health days, and, having numbers or emails to reach out if you don't feel very uh, challenged mentally, or something is bothering you. And when I was at the university, there was no such thing. It was before COVID, obviously. And it's a noteworthy try, or the universities try to do the best they can in supporting the students on campus and off campus too, because everything has been, digital and remote. There is a lot to be done, and I always believe in personal relationships and the value that a personal connection and personal communication has on the issues that have to do with mental health. So if you have someone to call, it's a lot different than having someone, to email, because it's not that personal. And I'm a fan of personal relationships in general. And even this is kind of a personal relationship. And because otherwise, if it weren't for Zoom, I would never have met you. But this is you invest in a relationship and then you get back from that relationship. And I think if you are in a challenging mental state, or you have different things in your mind, it's crucial to have someone to reach out to. So universities have hotlines, something like hotlines to reach out, for students to reach out, which I think it's the most impressive thing I have seen, from all these social media campaigns and all that. But I think there's still a long way to go, because not all universities do that, and not all supervisors support the students in a more holistic way, rather than send me the chapter 1 of your dissertation or the chapter 2 and I'll give you feedback. And it's not just that. But that's why I tell you that there's still a lot of things that can be done. But overall, it's a start with the universities.
Yeah, I think it's a good start, but they can be more creative like you, I guess, because as you said, the hotline is available to students, and even for working professionals, companies have those wellness centers where professionals, if they feel a burnout or just want to speak about the issues that they're going through, they can, call and have that word. But I do not know how much of it people make use of it. Everyone is not open to just pick up the phone, even though they know there's an anonymous person. You are anonymous to them as well. But people are not just comfortable to pick up and speak to anyone at any time. And as you said, that personal relationship is what works much better. So maybe, universities could see how they can help facilitate something like that. And I think more so for international students who are away from home, and they find it quite difficult in a new land, new culture altogether. So I think that's something universities could look into. Thank you so much, Maria, for being on our podcast today. And it was such an enlightening conversation. I learned so many things, and I was able to relate to all those points, how it could transition into learners and students once they step into the professional world. So thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and experience. And it was just wonderful having you here.
Okay, can I share when people can find me if they want to?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So whoever from your listeners want to reach out to me, they can visit my website. It's www.yourdissertation.coach. And they can book the free 45-minute session. They can go over all my programs. They can read a little bit more about me, but I think you included the most juicy parts. So feel free to reach out if anyone wants to.
Yes, and in our podcast episode, at the bottom, there will be a description, and I will link all Maria's website, her LinkedIn profile, whatever is available where you can find her.
Thanks for having me, and I had a blast. I always enjoy, I want to always enjoy what I do, and I think today we did a pretty good job together.
Yeah.